So cybersecurity, as in the very first keynote we discussed, that it is one of the key technology levers that enterprises and decision makers have been talking and investing in, because as we have been calling data as the key asset nowadays, it's really important. So securing data has become all the more important for enterprises, because that's the gold mine, I would say. So establishing a cyber resilient enterprise is the key today for enterprises. They have to ensure that the resiliency stays, considering the volatility in the market, the unpredictability which is there in the market, and above all, the cyber incidents which has increased many folds. And it is across the globe that we have been noticing, and somehow these cyber attackers have been aiming at developing countries also, because they see a lot of opportunity. The data which is emerging, which is being enriched and utilized, that is coming on their radar also. And I'm sure that very well applies for the Sri Lankan enterprises as well. So Suresh, if I would like to start from you as we are discussing all these aspects, with an evolving threat cybersecurity landscape, how are you balancing the utilization of emerging technologies like AI and machine learning with the human expertise that has been there to gather and act upon on the real-time threat intelligence?
First of all, thank you for having me here. So I think it's a great question to start with as well. So if we, talk about threat intel, especially with AI and ML coming in, the collection and the alert triage, as well as the decision making, all these aspects has been changed how we've been doing in the past. So if we take the data collection methods, it is obvious the AI and ML algorithms will create more effective patterns and more effective detection of anomalies compared to a human can. But still, I believe the human intervention is required, because a human can create more threat alert profiles or train more effectively the algorithms the way they wanted to collect and detect threat alerts. And also, if you take the detection part, the human intervention is required to, depending on the organization's threat model and the business risk, to train your algorithms to, again, detect the whatever the threat intel, as well as to take decisions and take the more contextual decisions based on the detections. And also the threat assessment. So when you get a threat alert, how you do the assessment. So what is the impact on this threat intel and what to my information assets of the organization? How much I am vulnerable in terms of this particular threat alert, and whether this contextualization, and also there could be localization. For example, we might have a threat alert or due to a ransomware or a log4j kind of attack, which was outbreak on another part of the world, which may be not relevant to your basically organization or our demography. So that contextual decisions can be taken by the human. Still, also we facilitate it through the threat intel. In addition to that, the incident response. So although now actually we also talk about the integration, SOAR, and automated threat response and all. Still, when we none of the, I think most of the markets globally are not mature enough to use all of these technologies, because we know that the way, without the basic hygiene of the organization, we can't implement a fully automated threat response platforms. So that, again, the human intervention is very crucial to take more important and prioritized decisions. So that's my take on that question.
Great. I think very well articulated. The way forward is how humans and machines can collaborate together and converge in all these aspects. And Indika, if I would like to ask you, in case if you would like to add on to the points of Suresh.
Thank you for inviting us for this forum, and I would like to add 2 points here, because the usage of AI and machine learning is the future. It has come, now gradually it is maturing. However, the regulatory requirements of the countries that are being used as well as the countries that are not being used, both has to match. And your entity, if your entity wants to adopt AI and ML, there will be a lot of boundaries and other hurdles to overcome. So in terms of, as Suresh very well articulated, the human resource is required. Plus, we need to look at the other impacts of using of AI and ML, because these have come to stay. So adaptation is the future.
True. And with this thought of adaptation, as it was, if I talk about the finance industry, it was more about having a physical interaction, but now it's more towards remote banking. That is how the banking industry has adapted. Jinendu, if I ask you, like especially post-pandemic, with this shift from physical to remote, how are you fortifying your cybersecurity measures to protect both institutional as well as your customers' data?
First of all, thank you for inviting. It's a great pleasure to be here. So I think the direction that we have headed on now, I think the pandemic basically pushed us forward. That's where the world was heading anyway. If you look at a lot of the developed countries, working from home, flexibility, all of that was something that was people were heading towards. But in the Asian region, we were basically pushed towards that. I guess because we were, especially in the banking industry, it was a very castle mode type of a situation where we did have a lot of controls in terms of defense in depth. We had we had a data center, we had all the controls to protect it. And then overnight, things sort of really rapidly started changing. People no longer could come to office. So on that aspect, when you have security inbuilt, it becomes a little bit easier, I guess, if you are coming from the banking industry. But few things that we did, I think I'll just touch upon maybe around 4 things that we looked upon in this new modern age, is the perimeter has now dissolved. We have come to accept that. And as what they now say is identity is the new perimeter. So we had very good sort of implementations on identity access management and privilege access management. That was one of the key areas in the new age that you really need to focus on. And the other is on the zero trust network access, where you don't trust anyone explicitly. Ensure that not only the person, your device posture, everything is sort of checked before you get access, and you only need to know basic access. One other point that in the new sort of the last couple of years that we were looking is on the external attack surface management, sort of looking out. Have outside in view on how good are we in terms of cyber hygiene when it comes to our public facing assets. And the third point was on the cybersecurity front. We wanted to sort of adopt international standards, right, on cybersecurity, like the NIST framework, which sorts of sets a benchmark for you to sort of achieve. These are the XYZ things that you need to accomplish. And on the new age, I think the final point I want to leave with is security by design rather than security by afterthought.
True.
Because if you look at all the applications, we had a situation where it was you pass it on to the security team at the edge, saying that okay, we have now developed something. Can you make it secure? So from DevOps to DevSecOps and making security by design and getting right there in front. I think these are a couple of things that we have ensured to sort of stay ahead of the game.
Great. Sunari, if you would like to add on to Jinendu's points.
Good afternoon, everyone. So yeah, I couldn't agree more with Jinendu. So as he correctly said, so the network perimeter has blurred forever. And now your new perimeter is from wherever the user is logging in, that is identity. And just to add to what he mentioned on top of the zero trust, the attack surface management, I think what I would suggest is also to be brilliant at the basics. Because if you look at most of the attacks, I think as much as the attacks have gained sophistication, they have mostly exploited basic vulnerabilities, like maybe like an unpatched server, or password, weak passwords, or password being stored in an insecure manner, or a user still clicking on a malicious link. So I think doing basics brilliantly and looking after your cyber hygiene is very important, even in this new arena. And as you said, to do that effectively, it helps if you follow a framework like the NIST or the ISO 27001, where it would tell you how you can effectively set up your cybersecurity controls. I mean, the thing is, it's not only the technical controls, you have to look at the people, process, technology aspect, and the framework would help you do that properly. Of course, starting at the governance is very important to have the right tone at the top. And today, cybersecurity is a item in the boardroom agenda. So the ownership has to go to the board. You have to start right there. And then set up the proper information security policies, which would clearly define the requirements to be met by your staff, your partners, and all your stakeholders. And then, of course, implement all the technical controls like the defense in depth, and of course, things like multi-factor authentication, DLP, encryption, all becomes important in this extended network. And of course, as I said, continuously monitor your risk profile through pen test, VAs, and see that you maintain the proper, the risks are maintained at an acceptable level. And of course, like personally in our case, what we have done is, compliance doesn't necessarily mean security, but still complying to standards like PCI DSS in particular when it comes to card data helps you to maintain security while also maintaining the trust with the stakeholders.
Okay, and continuing with that thought only, because as you mentioned, all these technologies, this is definitely converging the networking and the security aspects for a seamless banking experience for your customers. But what are the challenges that you faced when you implemented this integration process? What are the key challenges?
Okay, so yeah, it all sounds very good to say seamlessly integrate network and security, but I think the IT teams here know how painful it can be sometimes. So I think a few of the challenges, one would be the complexity and the interoperability challenges. Especially I think in Sri Lanka, particularly in banks, there are still some legacy systems that are running. So trying to integrate those new age, modern network solutions with legacy systems can be quite painful and complex. So unless you follow a proper procedure, it can be very challenging. Also, I think the performance impact. Sometimes when you try to implement security on network infrastructure, it can have an impact on the performance. For example, like you try to implement advanced encryption, but that can add to the latency and in turn the transaction time. So these can be quite challenging. So it's all about maintaining that balance between security and performance. Otherwise, you will have best of security, but you will not be supporting the business, which is the core. Security is supposed to be an enabler. So I think you have to strike that balance when you're trying to do that.
With ensuring that security runs parallelly or simultaneously, business continuity definitely is the key priority.
Correct.
For the CXOs or the boardroom, I'd say. Suresh, if you would like to add on to what she said, any other challenge that you foresee or have witnessed?
Yeah, I think Sunarik covered most of them. So I would like to extend it even, when it comes to a enterprise bank level network, so we do have third-party integrations. So although we talk about all these zero trust and all these principles, so how we ensure the traffic is going in and out from your third parties when you do give them the remote access to troubleshoot you, because at certain points your objective might be when your core systems are probably not functioning as you expected, It's going to be to get them up and running to serve your customer. But at that point, will you be, considering all these seamless integrations as well as this, all these zero trust security aspects? How you maintain that security? In addition to that, I think as Shonali mentioned, the user experience is also matters. Because, we talk about all the zero trust and seamless integrations as well as identity access management and all. But, bringing all these homegrown legacy systems and everything together to achieve this objective is really challenging. It's years of work. It's a long journey and lot of cost, resources, as well as project management required. So it's obviously a very challenging journey towards it, but again, what is important is consistently moving forward towards that journey.
Definitely. With the kind of digital avatars that are coming from the human beings only, trust has become a very important aspect. And with that thought, Janindu, I'll move towards you. So with this zero trust becoming more and more prevalent when we are talking about cybersecurity and securing the entire perimeter and the enterprise, how do you foresee adaptation of this framework while embodying the philosophy, particularly when it comes to the sensitive nature of the data that is there with the organization?
So I think Suresh laid a good foundation on,
Yes.
so zero trust is a big buzzword, right? Everybody is talking about it, every vendor will talk about it, it's the buzzword right now, right?
Yes.
So, and it's definitely, it's harder than it sounds, right?
Definitely.
From an implementation perspective. And I think Suresh very correctly said, it is, it's not something that you can switch on something and say, hey, look, I have zero trust, right? It's a philosophy at the end of the day.
Definitely.
For some of you, it talks only about 3 core things. One is never trust, always verify. Second principle is, limited access, least privilege access. And third one is assume breach. So basically, how do you adopt these 3 aspects into all the security or the IT operations that we do is the challenge here. So, so the one good thing is if you look at assume breach, if you actually look at from a point of view that you are breached, the way that you would do or operate or think about a control or implementing control is very different. So it's a mindset change than more than anything else. So if you look at the principles like least privilege, we have been doing this for years and years. These are not new things, right? It's a mindset change, and it's about how you go about it. So I think for somebody who's starting a zero trust journey within the operation, technology is certainly is required, vendors are required, but you need to first of all have your own strategy in place. And the first starting point is knowing what is critical to you, right? What is your crown jewels, right? What is your assets? What are the users? What are the data flows? If you don't have that information, inventory, you can't really come up with the least privilege strategy, right? So you have to start there. And if you look at, reports like Gartner, so they basically talk about 2 key areas that you can sort of do quick wins, 80-20, quick wins to get your zero trust journey. One is on the zero trust network access, right? Where you can get rid of most of your traditional VPN type of access into a contextual based, always verifying sort of access. And the second is on segmentation. So, all the way up to micro-segmentation. So, those are the 2 key areas that, I would like to leave on a zero trust journey that, you can start on with. But it is very important to, first of all, understand where your assets are and, how do you sort of start implementing zero trust. And one key area is on data, right? So, when you get into data, do you know where your data is? Is it classified? Do you have a data discovery program in place to discover information? And then finally, do you have a data protection, program in place?
Yes.
So it's a big program, right? And it'll, as Suresh said, it might take a couple of years to sort of achieve nirvana at the end of the day. But it's a journey, and it's a journey that we should all, take small steps towards.
Definitely, well articulated. And as you mentioned that it's a philosophy. It needs to be imbibed in the culture. And when we are talking about culture and philosophy, it all drills down to employees. because end of the day, they are the core pillars of the organization who are working on it. And organization would be taking various steps to improve or increase the awareness of employees within the organization against the cyber security aspects. So Suresh, going back to you, what all initiatives do you think have been fruitful when it comes to improving awareness among the employees about these threats? And how do you plan, or would be actually doing it? How do you calculate or assess that certain initiatives have been fruitful? How is that assessment being done with the employees?
Yeah. So I think we all know the human are the weakest in the chain. So because of that, when it comes to people, process, technology, people aspect is the most important one. There's no right or wrong answer, or there's no silver bullet to do it. So there are multiple things you have to do it, because that's why it is generally called the human factors in cybersecurity. It is the most challenging part, because when you have to implement a control, you have to think of a way the control is how effective it is, how best the users will follow it. So those are the key aspects when you have to think about when you are designing a control, right? So in my experience, there are multiple things we do. If I share you some key insights, one of the key threats for especially when it comes to banking and financial sector, is the phishing attacks. So because of that, we generally do phishing simulation exercise the monthly basis. So there are going to be monthly phishing simulation exercise to identify risky users of the bank. So based on that, we direct them for training, and these trainings are mandatory for them. In that way, and these phishing simulation emails also very tricky, so that it's very difficult for them to distinguish between a legitimate email and a phishing email. So that's obviously, we all know that's how it's going to be when a real phishing attack comes in. So that way we make sure that users are trained up to the standard, and we do it on a monthly basis on different scenarios, and where also we segment them sometime, same simulation, into different types of scenarios as well. That way we continue to identify risk users, and we continue to train them. Then also we are going into one step ahead. If one user is actually clicked more than 3 incidents, and if they can't attend the certain training programs we do, we are planning to actually lock down their AD accounts, so that they can't really come to the work and do anything, because they need to sanitize themselves as from a risky user to acceptable level of security aware user. So that's culture has to be built in. So apart from that, general the training programs you have within the organization, especially about your induction programs, you can incorporate the mandatory security training, and your training user training awareness platforms. You have to have certain campaigns run through these platforms to make sure that users are effectively doing this, and also you can have the post-evaluation exams. In that way, how the way users have been basically the content whether can be improved, those things can be done. One of the more important thing what we do is we evaluate the on-ground implementation. So we actually do go for the branch visits, and we directly question users. So do you know where is your security policy? So and how often you reviewed it? So what is our password control? So these kind of common questions, we generally question them when we go around. And also we check with how they dispose, because security is not only your information security is not only your digital data, it also applies to your physical data, your hard copies as well. So how you destroy your hard copies also matters. So these kind of awareness we actually verify on ground as well. So basically we do it as a measurement. In addition to that, we incorporate them to as a KPIs as part of the individual JDs, so that training and awareness is mandatory, and also each branch manager is responsible and has to ensure that all staff under his purview has to complete that all these information security related training programs. That way we evaluate their KPIs as well. In addition to that, the phishing rates we measure on monthly basis. It's been, when we started about 4 years back, it was probably about 35%, meaning out of 100 emails, phishing emails, simulation emails sent, 35 of them, minimum they're gonna open it. So now we brought it down to a level, it's less than 2%. So it actually took a lot of effort to do it, but end of the day, it's really worth it.
Okay, and as you talked about that, the pace at which cybersecurity measures need to actually reach up to the pace of cybersecurity incidents, which are mentioned. With that thought, Indika, if I may ask you, from an industry perspective, the financial industry aspects, the current cybersecurity measures, how they are being adapted, what processes should be in place to ensure that the strategies are also constantly evolving with these emerging threats?
The simple answer is if your organizations want to go through a measurement process to understand where you stand from your cyber hygiene perspective, you need to anyway adapt certain standards like NIST kind of a things, or certain frameworks like COBIT kind of a industry-based frameworks, or you can go for certain certifications like ISO or PCI DSS, because if you adapt these standards, frameworks, or certifications, what will naturally happen to your organization will be streamlined in terms of any incident information collection, reporting, and taking certain decisions on that. So the strategy is embedded with these standards, frameworks, and certifications. That is my understanding, and that's the message that I can pass to all of you. On top of this, what will happen is the regulators will come and say, you need to adapt this, don't wait for that. So currently, if you look at the banking and financial sector, very streamlined regulations, directions has been issued. Certain other sectors also, like insurance kind of sectors also, regulators have given measurements to follow on these certifications or standards or frameworks. But don't wait, because I know the audience is here from certain other sectors also. So don't wait for that. Your measurements can be proactively adapted. So it is up to you to look at what the assets that you want to protect, what the business process you want to protect, what the customer data you want to protect, and be proactive in adapting this. What we see here is they may install certain security products, certain event alerting products in isolation without thinking about the big picture and the impact to the entire industry or the connected industries. So every industry has to work in the success of the other industry. So that's the norm. So we have to collectively work, like if the banking sector or finance sector you take, there are certain established entities by government and also supported by the sectorial organizations to collect this data and give the measurements and the yardsticks. Okay, this is what is happening. Please compare yourselves against those measurements. So as I again mentioned, it's the organization that should decide how you need to approach and protect and how you need to abide by disciplined approach. So disciplined approach, proactive adaptation is the expectation.
And as it's been considered that discipline is a yardstick that definitely gives that direction towards innovation, but at times few of the industries may not disagree with it. disagree, because this is something which at times come as a roadblocker when it comes to innovation. And with that thought, I'll move to Janendra, that how do you, from an industry perspective, cross industries, or say even from financial aspects, how do you tend to balance that innovation is not hampered, but at the same time, these regulations, compliances, and standards are also in the place, because that's for the best for everyone?
So I think if you take the local context, at least from a Sri Lankan point of view, the last couple of years, the regulations actually has been, very pro-modern way of thinking, where they're actually looking at all the new sort of what's happening across the world and sort of coming up with frameworks and regulations. So I think a lot of these restrictions that we had, in terms of, what we can and cannot do, a lot of those has been actually addressed in certain ways, and we are also sort of looking at, GDPR, our Data Protection Act is, enacted, we are looking at other regulations. So from a regulatory point of view, yes, you have to have certain X, Y, Z controls. And I think the regulator is doing a good job at it at this point, at least from a finance,
Okay.
banking and finance perspective, right? But what you also need to sort of realize is being compliant to a standard or a regulation does not really mean that you're secure, right? So what happens in a lot of the organizations, so in my past, I have been auditor as well at some point in my career. So a lot of people do this as a checkbox exercise, right? So yes, you are compliant, right? But
Yes.
are you really secure? No, right? So I think it's the way that you take in the regulation. So I think regulations are there to keep us in check. But you know, as security professionals, we need to look into the actual risk, right? And if you look at it from a risk-based secure approach, a lot of these regulations, you automatically become compliant, right? And to answer your question on agility and innovation, so the thing is, a lot of agility and innovation gets hampered when security and compliance is taught right at the end, right? So when there is a new product or a new idea, you bring the full team together, right? From the inception, if you get security involved, you can you can envision the product or your service with inbuilt security. So the final thought is, I would like to say that working from home, right, which is now a big thing, right? Even a lot of organizations, at least you're on a hybrid model, right?
Yep.
My personal view is that is brought to you by security, right? Security was not a hamper, right? We are the people who enabled it, right?
It was an enabler.
We
yeah.
ensured that there's endpoint protection, there's DLP, there's EDR, right? There's authentication, right? So that, there is minimum risk on, taking an asset outside the organization. So I think that's
True.
the view that you need to sort of take, but, regulations are important, but I think having your own security culture and processes are also very important, and you sort of marry the two, and not purely go on a regulatory perspective, because then it's going to be a checkbox exercise.
Very well articulated, Janendu, because regulations, standards, frameworks, and compliances are something which enables. Another enabler is technology. And somehow, as you said, that, nothing stops from a breach. Because the kind of digital world that we are living in, it won't be fair enough to say that you are completely secure. Because as a matter of fact, you may be under attack right now also. It's just that you have not identified it or recognized it. That's the kind of agility or unpredictability that digital aspects come on with. And with that thought, if I move towards you, Sunari, a breach is bound to happen. The question is when. When it will happen and when you are realizing that breach has actually happened in your organization. With that unfortunate event, if it ever occurs, what immediate protocols as an organization, as enterprises, should be there, and how is leveraging these actionable threat intelligence for responding and recovering should be there in place?
Yes, Pratik. As you correctly said, it's not a matter of if, but when now. And as it commonly says, there are two types of organizations, the ones that have been attacked and the ones that do not know that they have been attacked. So I think this essentially means that there is no such thing as foolproof security. And even if you have the best-in-class, even if you think you have the best-in-class security, there's always a chance that you will be attacked. So accordingly, we need to move our shift not only from always preventing the bad guys from attacking us, but also how you react and respond. So you need to move your focus onto resilience. So I think increasingly, organizations are being judged not only by how they prevent attacks, but by the character with which they respond to an incident.
Absolutely.
So this, of course, means that you have a proper incident response plan, a well-articulated plan in place. So, traditionally, when you talk about recovery, it used to be like BCP scenarios like, okay, the data center is not available, the site is not available. But now, in the age of data breaches and ransomware, so it needs to be a different kind of a cybersecurity response plan. You need to have plans where you need to reach out to the media, to the stakeholders. So you asked about the immediate protocols. So immediate protocols, I would say generally, we would need to have, the first protocol, of course, would be to contain. So to make sure that you isolate the affected asset or assets so that the damage is contained. So I think the first thing you need to do is you need to take all actions to contain the attack. Then you need to notify the correct people. Of course, this need to be a predefined escalation process where, whom do you notify? Your incident response teams, your executive management, your people in your communication plan. So you need to notify. Another important immediate protocol I would say is preserving the evidence, because you need to follow the correct security protocols to secure the evidence. In order for you to do the proper investigations later on to identify the root cause. And one of the most critical aspects would be a clear, transparent communication plan. A plan which is well defined, which has proper ownership. Once a breach has occurred, it's not the time to write down your press release or what you say in the press conference. So all these need to be pre-arranged. And the people who are supposed to do that must know that they're supposed to do that, which means that you need to do simulations and constant testing of your incident response plans. So those, I would say, are the critical immediate protocols. And moving to the second part on how threat intel can be used in responding to incidents. So I think first, you can use the threat intels for real-time analysis of understanding the type of the attack, the source, the indicators of compromise. So you can utilize threat intels to do that part. Then once you have identified, I think threat intel can also be effectively utilized in implementing the preventive measures, like you can use threat intel to update your firewall rules, maybe to deploy the patches or correct the access control gaps, things like that. We can use threat intel. And it would, of course, also help subsequent to the event. The post-implementation, you can use a threat intel to really identify the root causes and put in place the necessary controls to prevent future recurrence. So I think those are a few areas where you can use threat intel in incident response.
Great thoughts, Sunari. I think that is the way forward to have a very resilient organization. It's just not about an upfront defense. It's how you rebound in case a breach has happened. And there is this framework, IDPRR, that you identify, you detect, you protect, you recover, and you respond. These are the 5 key elements which will definitely move your enterprise towards a resilient organization. So with that, as we are coming towards the end of our session, and it's already time's up, but there is one last question. So looking forward for next 5 years, what do you as panel, how is your perception in terms of the biggest challenges or biggest opportunities when you're establishing a cyber resilient organization within your country or say for the SAARC region? So Indika, if
I
you
think
start off.
we need to look at as a country who has gone through certain difficulties in the last recent times. So we need to look at very positively. So if you look at the Sri Lankan experiences, I think all of us are here has a duty to look at it positively and take the opportunities. So in this positive look, what we need to look at is we need to work together. So most of the enterprises in financial sector will have to marry together maybe regulatory pressure or the environmental pressure. So that is coming. So you are not alone as an entity. So you need to work together all your standardizations, not in isolation. Look at the other stakeholders who are contributing to your survival and work as a team. That's the message I need to pass. In terms of cybersecurity efforts and all, don't work in isolation, work as a team, work as an industry. Any other thoughts to panel?
Great, so stage is open. Yes, Suresh.
Yeah, so just to add on to that, probably, as a SAARC region, something we can think about, that the data protection related laws and regulations are coming up. Now, Sri Lanka already have one, now India already have one enacted,
Yes.
and I think although we are probably at the primary stages of these requirements, we all know how EU region has been evolved in this particular area and what is the strength now they have, especially on this data protection area. So as a region, if we can also establish kind of a similar collaborative protocols within the region also, that's going to be, more beneficial for us in terms of businesses, as well as, making sure that our customer data is protected, and same time their data privacy rights are reserved. So that is one of the opportunity. In addition to that, I think as a region, the cloud adoption is now evolving and also kind of booming as well. So probably we can take it as one of the opportunities, so that we can collaboratively make on certain decisions together. In that way, we should be able to leverage more out of these cloud-based adoption and the technologies.
Great thoughts. Thank you, Suresh. Thank you, everyone in the panel. And I would say, I will call Sri Lanka already as a pretty resilient economy. The way it has bounced back with economic turmoil, I'm sure cybersecurity aspects are something which they will get hold upfront. They will recover, rebound, and be resilient to the true nature of it. Thank you so much.